Hi, Gopal. You can unmute yourself if you're, I don't know if you can hear me.
Okay, I don't know why I have this background.
Oh my gosh. I can't see you and you look really scary because your eyes are just the only things I can see.
How do I like freaking fix this? Virtual.
It's
Okay,
like your back there. Oh my gosh. Oh, you look
so
nice.
weird.
Yeah.
Okay, so I should change. So you're gonna be on the whole time, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna rename myself. I have everyone's like Facebook pages pulled up. I'm just kind of searching everyone so that way I have everything. So I can just tag them easily. I'll just copy their, or like make sure I have the right person up. Okay, we need to send the Eventbrite. We need to go live first and then send the Eventbrite.
Yeah, let's do that. All right, so more live on Facebook. Give me a second. It's rerouting me. Okay, so I think this is the part where I have to tag everyone, right? Just when I'm like launching it.
I don't know where you're at.
Oh, okay, yeah, let me.
I can't see.
Yeah, it's fine. Okay. Oh, I can see you here. You cross post this poster. Yeah. Okay, I see you on the Facebook Live. I just have to go live. Give me a second. I'm gonna quickly add a title or description.
Candidate Forum.
Okay.
You can say Central Texas Candidate Forum.
Yeah, I'm copying it from the event, so. Okay, and then should I tag all those organizations as well?
Yes, if you can.
Yeah, I'm gonna do that really quickly. And then Austin, Asian, community, Austin Asian, community, civic.
Well, so are you, you'll be on, okay, so you're on the document. That's good. For questions.
Coalition of Texas. Almost, sorry. So, Asian, association now. Okay. So, Asian.
We have to make sure we're on speaker view here.
Yeah, I have it on speaker view here. So yeah, if you can just confirm everything's good on your end. Association, Chamber of Commerce.
I have some of the reps already on, so we need to get them. Once you're done, we can. Once you're done, we have to send the Eventbrite thing.
Oh, okay. There's some attendees on here, so let me move them over. Go to panelist. Hello, everyone. We're about 15 minutes away from going live, so we're just kind of getting the Facebook Live ready. So appreciate your patience.
Noreen, you can show your face.
Okay. It's like I wasn't ready. I can't.
Hello.
Hello.
Hey, y'all, I'm just going to apologize real quick. I have to be at work at 3 today. We got called in early, so I'm probably going to have to bounce around 2:15, 2:20.
Okay, we can start with you. I'm Azra. I'm the moderator, so I will start with you, if that's okay.
Yes.
And once we get more of the candidates on here, I'm going to give you all a brief overview of how we're going to do it. You should have gotten an email from Ashwin about how, I mean, there's 14 of y'all, so it's going to be jam-packed, and we want to allow an opportunity for Q&A, so we're going to be really strict on time. So I'm going to reiterate that again when we have more candidates on there, but please don't feel offended because I'm going to be like, bam, bam, bam. Think of it as like one of those 1-minute dating rounds, you know? So we'll be with y'all. We're just like setting things up, so just give us a little bit of time.
Okay. Copy. Check that. Okay, sorry, the go live feature is let me try here.
Is it not working?
Give me 1 second, sorry.
We really need to send out to the attendees.
Choose variant. Okay. Let me X out of it and maybe start again.
Is it freezing up?
Yeah, it's not giving me the option, like the box below is grayed out. So let me try once more. It's okay.
Okay.
I think we should be good here. It's fetching. Looks like it's working now. We'll just go live now.
Okay, perfect. Because then I can send that link. I already have the Eventbrite email set up.
Okay.
So I'll just do that. I'll send that right now.
Okay.
Has it gone through?
It's like going. It's it looks like it's halfway there.
Oh, it's loading still?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, now we should be live. Let me check on my phone, make sure. Yep, we are live.
Has it gone through?
Yep. I'm checking on my phone. It shows that we're live. It's like going. Okay, yeah, it looks like it's live. We're good to go.
Okay.
Can you post the link in chat, please?
We do that. Give me just a moment. I can actually send it to the attendees via eVite as well.
I'm doing Eventbrite right now.
Oh, you're doing Eventbrite? Okay, perfect. And I do see a few on Facebook Live, so just a heads up, we're starting the session at 2 o'clock Central Time. So just give us a moment as we start prepping. Thank you. Ezra, it looks like there's actually a new live tab on page as well, so I'll send that over to you.
Okay.
And Ezra, I do see a few individuals that are
Yeah.
from our that aren't panelists. So do you want to give everyone a heads up? And did we also request everyone to update their name to kind of update their social media handle along with maybe the district? I see Bill kind of has done that, and so has Lucio. Looks like actually everyone else has as well. So I think we should be good.
Well, so for Zane and Gopal and them, we need to transfer them. I mean, I told them to go to Facebook Live, but they need to go, they should not be panelists. I'm changing their role to attendee. We have about 1 minute left, so I'm gonna just go ahead and give you guys the rundown. I'm sure many of y'all have received emails from Ashwin about how there's about 14 of y'all on here. Some are leaving a little early, like Justin Berry, so we're gonna start with him, and some are coming on a little bit later at 2:30. So we're gonna try our best to keep things in line, but essentially the format is you're gonna get 1 minute to do your introduction. And then after everybody introduces themselves, we're gonna go with 1 minute for people to, we're gonna ask you all some questions. I've gone through your websites or your social media pages and learned more about y'all, so it'll be a little bit more campaign specific. And then after that, again, we'll do a second round of questions and then probably open it up to Q&A depending on how much time we have. Again, we're giving y'all about 60 to 90 seconds to respond to questions. I'm going to be really, really firm with it because we do have a very large group and we want to get everybody to participate as much as possible. And so I was telling some of y'all who were on earlier, think of it as like one of those 1 minute dating things where like you go in and you have 1 minute to tell that person why they should date you. So think of it like that. You have that 1 minute to tell them why people should vote for you and answers to our questions. So please bear with us for being very strict on time, but I hope you all can appreciate that we're trying to be as inclusive of everyone as possible. And we should be starting shortly. All right, so we're about 2 minutes in, so we're gonna go ahead and get started. Hello everyone, my name is Azra Siddiqi and I'm the founder of WiseUp Texas, and we're one of the many, many organizations that are partaking in this Central Texas Asian American Forum. And just to give you all a little bit more information about the organizations that are partaking, it's including us is Austin Asian Community Civics Coalition, Indian American Coalition of Texas, South Asian Bar Association of Austin, Greater Austin Asian Chamber of Commerce, Korean American Association of Greater Austin, and Austin Chinese American Network. and network of Asian American organizations. So thank you so much to all the candidates for joining us today. And we're very, very grateful to hear from all of y'all about why the Asian American community in Central Texas should be voting for you in your respective districts. A little bit about me, I'm excited to moderate this event. My background has mostly been working in state politics, and so it's going to be very fascinating for me to learn about all of your platform issues and what you guys are advocating for. Remember, this is a nonpartisan event, and we are all organizations that are nonpartisan, but we want to give the disclosure that there are PACs that are attending this event and listening in to the representatives' answers or the candidates' answers. So just to keep that in mind. But we do not endorse anybody in terms of all the organizations that I have mentioned. So let's get started with introductions for each of the candidates. And I'm going to start with Justin Berry from House District 47. You have about 1 minute.
Thank you so much. My name is Justin Berry, and I'm a full-time police officer here in Austin. I've been a police officer for going on 13 years. I'm one of the vice presidents of the Austin Police Association, and I've been endorsed by Governor Greg Abbott. It's a true honor to be in this race right now, and we've been running a campaign on just trying to bring back common sense and good judgment. You know, for one things that I've seen as a police officer is we respond to people's day-to-day lives and the problems they have. And we try to work on finding those solutions for them, but the solutions we can provide are often temporary. And that's one thing I will look at forward to working on is finding those common sense solutions, working with our diverse community and ensuring that we can implement policies that are set up for success rather than policies that are based off of knee-jerk emotional reactions. I'm a big believer in setting our community up for success. I also want to thank the Asian Chamber of Commerce for having the opportunity for all y'all's help during the COVID crisis for supplying us with all that PPE equipment and supplies. It was truly appreciated. And thank y'all for coming to our time of need when we truly need it. It's not forgotten. So thank you so much. And I want to keep it brief because I know we got a lot to do. But if you have any more information about me, feel free to reach out to me or go to my website at www.berryfortexas.com.
Thank you, Justin. All right, you set a great example for the rest of the panelists to keep it at that 1 minute. So I'm going to go over to Vikki Goodwin, who is the Democrat running for HD 47. I think you're mute. Okay, there you go.
Hi, thank you. I'm Vikki Goodwin, and I am the current state representative for House District 47. I'm a mom, a wife, and a business owner, and have lived in this district for 27 years. I have gotten to know the people of this district through my work and volunteer activities, and it's near and dear to my heart. So I continue to make myself accessible to the people of the district. We're going through a really tough, challenging time right now and have a lot of tough issues that we'll be facing next session. But I'm not waiting until next session. Every day I'm working to serve the people of House District 47. I've been connecting those who have lost their jobs with the Texas Workforce Commission. I've been supporting our public schools. I've been distributing free masks, which came from a Chinese organization, and I appreciate that. I've been helping with the census and working with constituents on a wide variety of issues. The stakes are high next session. We'll either maintain our investments in education and healthcare using our rainy day fund to get us through, or the legislature could slash budgets and critical services. You, the voter, will decide which way we go.
Thank you so much, Representative Goodwin. I am going to now hand it over to Michael Clark, who is a Libertarian candidate for HD 47.
Thank you kindly for having us. I can't really step to the veterans in this race, but I will say I am a small business owner. This is my first time running for office, and I will say that I am all about individual freedoms all the time. That includes keeping your tax money in your pocket and deciding where it goes versus having everybody in your neighborhood deciding where it goes. I just want to leave it at that. It's all your freedoms all the time. There isn't a whole lot to add to that. No pandemic, no nothing included in that.
All right, thank you so much, Michael. So you all have heard from HD 47, the 3 candidates that are running. We're going to pivot over to HD 20. And the candidate that is from HD 20, that is the only one from HD 20 participating in this webinar, is Jessica. So Jessica, I'm going to hand it to you if you don't mind giving us a brief 1-minute introduction.
Hi, everybody. My name is Jessica Tiedt. I'm the Democratic nominee for House District 20, and I am running up against a Republican incumbent who repeatedly gets failing grades on things like education and equity. Going into this upcoming session, it's going to be so important that we make sure that the people that we elect to represent us are going to be taking care of the business at hand, of regrowing our economy at the state level, as well as making sure that our kids are taken care of in school. And so it's super important that we take people at what they have been when it comes to how they've represented us in the past, and that we look for leadership that is going to be supportive of initiatives that are actually going to be helpful for our communities. And that's what I hope to do. You can check out my website, Jessica4TX.com, for more information about my campaign. And I hope that you do, and that we get to have a good conversation about it.
Thank you, Jessica. And now we'll transfer over to HD 48. Representative Donna Howard, would you like to begin with your introduction, please?
Sure. Thank you all so much for having me. I'm sorry I had a little technical difficulties at the beginning. That always happens when you don't want it to. You can hear me though, I assume, right?
We can.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Somebody always has to say that. I have been the state representative for House District 48 since 2006. And that has allowed me to achieve a leadership position in the House, specifically looking at appropriations. I've been on that committee for 4 terms. It's given me really a great opportunity to advocate for our community and for our state in terms of investing in a responsible way that will help our state continue to move forward. And that is especially critical when we're talking about what we need to be looking at next session, which I know we'll get into later, but in terms of the impacts that COVID has had on our community. My background is in nursing. I have a degree from UT Austin in nursing and in health education. I worked as a critical care nurse. I was a health education instructor at UT and served on the Eanes School Board, which also gave me a lot of opportunity to learn about school finance, which is another big issue that we work on. I've been fortunate to be able to serve on the Austin Chamber's task force for reopening business in our community. And that's been a real opportunity to look at how do we let data drive the decisions that we're making here and open up the economy as quickly and as safely as we can. I've also been serving on, am I already through?
Yeah, sorry.
Okay. There's lots to say. I'm sorry.
You'll get a second round. Don't worry.
Okay.
All right, thank you so much, Representative Howard. I'm going to now have Bill Strieber introduce himself. You are the Republican opponent up against Representative Howard.
Oh, first off, it's pronounced Strieber, but everybody always gets it wrong.
My
so
apologies.
no worries there. I'm a 53-year-old business executive with varied experiences in everything from environmental reclamation to biotech development to I even served a stint as a janitorial supply salesman. I was a toilet paper salesman. So I have a lot of business experience that I'm looking to bring to the Texas legislature. I entered the race when I saw that the Austin's quality of life was in steep decline with the vagrancy and the squalor on the streets. And now we have rampant crime. And thanks to you, Mr. Officer Berry, to help that out. It seems as though those in power are only doing things to exacerbate the situation by limiting our police. Crime and safety has reached a point where there's angst to go downtown. There's fear to get out of your car to fill up with gas. With all the push to defund the police, I'm going to work through the Texas legislature's constitutional authority to defund the city council. There's too much going on here to stand by, and for too many years it's been going in the wrong direction thanks to the left-wing liberal groupthink that has been pushing Austin to where we are now.
Thank you so much. And now we will go on to District 49. We only have one candidate participating, and that is Representative Gina Hinojosa.
Well, thank you. I'm honored to be here. And I am running for re-election to my third term. Before serving in the Texas House, I served on the Austin ISD School Board. I served as school board president for a year during that term. I'm a mother, I am a lawyer, and public education continues to be a passion of mine. I was not selected by the speaker to serve on that committee, but I didn't let that stop me from taking a lead on that issue. And I continue to do what I can to lead on that issue, which I know is very important to the Asian American community as it is to all the rest of us. I believe we need to protect the funding for our public schools and make sure that we have a plan to reopen them safely. Currently, we do not. And so I, along with many of my Democratic colleagues, have been pushing the governor to come up with a plan to get the virus under control so we can prioritize our schools and our students. I wore this shirt today. We are in the anniversary of a woman's right to vote. It's so important that we have forums like this because we need to encourage engagement for historically underrepresented communities. So again, I just want to thank you for hosting this forum.
Thank you so much. And now we'll go to District 50. So Representative Israel, if you wouldn't mind turning on your camera so we can see your face and unmute.
Hey, everybody. Hi, it's Celia Israel, State Representative. Just left an event up here in Williamson County. But yeah, my name's Celia. I've finished my third legislative session. I'm a small business owner and passionate about things revolving Texas. I got a love of Texas from my mother, who was raised me in El Paso, Texas. I look forward to working again on common sense solutions to resolve an economic crisis that we are going to find ourselves in. We've got to work across party lines to do that. And I love the topic of transportation, regardless of party. We're all stuck in traffic together. And I look forward to earning your vote again and bringing my experience to bear with my Republican friends to do good things for Texas.
Thank you so much. We also were scheduled to have the Mr. De La Rose, and I don't believe he signed on. Maybe he'll come on a little bit later. So I'm going to pivot on over to the next district, which is 51, and that is with Representative Eddie Rodriguez.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having all of us here. My name's Eddie Rodriguez. I'm running for re-election to my 10th term. I've been representing District 51 for the last 18 years. District 51 is central South Austin, central East Austin, and southeast Travis County. My passion has been for most of my career in the legislature, affordable housing and affordability issues in general, and economic opportunity for all. Public education is a big issue for me as well, and equality generally is a big issue that I work on. I want to take my experience into 2021 with you all's help and your support, with my priorities being getting universal broadband throughout the state of Texas, both in the rural areas and in the urban communities, meaningful and sensible criminal justice reform as well, and strengthening the social safety net. We've seen throughout this crisis that is a problem that we have in our state. I want to work with my Democratic friends and colleagues and my Republican friends and colleagues to get something done there too. So thanks.
Thank you so much. And now let's pivot to District 52. Mr. Lucio Valdez, do you mind introducing yourself to everyone?
Yes, thank you. My name is Lucio Valdez. I am a father. I've been married 29 years. I have 3 sons. I am a retired police officer. I did 21 years in the city of Galveston. I'm also a retired military. I did 34 years, both active and reserve. My leadership skills are surpassed to none. I retired as a sergeant major of the United States Army. My passion is to serve my constituents, is to take care of my soldiers. So I'm going to continue that when I get in the state house. Security is my key stance, is taking care of our public safety, continuing to protect our Constitution, both state and U.S. Constitution, to protect our borders, to protect our students in the school. They can't be educated if they're scared of what's going on around them. So public safety is one of my key stance when I get in the State House.
All right, thank you so much. And I will now turn it over to Representative Talarico, who is a representative for District 52. If you wouldn't mind unmuting and turning on your camera so that we can hear your introduction.
Well, I'm having a little bit of trouble turning on my camera. I just left the event that Celia was doing.
Okay. Well, we can hear you. So why don't you go ahead and give us your 1-minute intro. Hello? All right, we may have lost him. So we'll try and come back to you, Representative Talarico. I'm going to go to District 136. And if Mr. Mike Guevara, I hope I pronounced your last name correctly, would like to give your introduction, that would be great.
Yeah, thank you very much. And that's close enough. It gets all butchered all different times away. So
No, you should let me know. I would like to properly pronounce it.
Okay. Well, my name is Mike Guevara, and I'm running for House District 136 as the Republican candidate. 136 is southeast Williamson County, which includes part of Austin, Round Rock, Cedar Park, Leander. I've lived in the district now, it'll be 20 years come January. I'm a husband and a father. I've been married 13 years. I'm an attorney, graduated from University of Texas School of Law. Since I've been out of law school, my main practice has been administrative law, representing mostly municipalities. So I've got a lot of experience working with municipalities, with state representatives, with congressmen, with federal agencies, state agencies. During my last year of law school, I was able to work a legislative session in 1999 with Domingo Garcia, who's actually a Democrat out of Dallas, because that's where I'm from. My dad did 41 years with the Dallas Police Department. My mom was a school nurse. I'm a prosecutor because, you know, the justice system is a big deal right now. Prosecutor for many of the cities we represent. So I've got working knowledge of the penal code. Since the excitement that we've had with that, I've had the opportunity to work with 3 police departments to work on their use of force policies and adjust those. I've met with Cedar Park I'm a city council member in Cedar Park. I've met with our police association, strong supportive police officers, because I believe that we are a government based on laws. And if we can't enforce those laws, then everything else falls down from there. So my experience, like I said, as a lawyer and then also as a council member in Cedar Park for 2.5 years, I think is important. And plus, because of my work throughout the state, I've been able to work across lines with Democrats and Republicans and actually work session for a Democrat when I was in law school.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm going to now turn it over to your opponent, who is Representative John Bucy.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. And I apologize. I'm in my car. I just came from the Javier Ambler rally as well. But it's so important to me to be here. I want to say hi to Mike, my opponent. We've had a few opportunities to get to know each other and talk. And I think even though we don't always agree on policy, we're trying to run a campaign that our community can be proud of, both of us. And so let me just first say hi to Mike and welcome him here today as well. And secondly, I want to say my values are not Democratic values or Republican values. I'm a proud Democrat, but I learned my values from my Republican grandfather who lived in this district for over 35 years. And that is fighting for Texas values. And what I mean by that is we fight and we prioritize public education, and we fight and we prioritize healthcare. That's why I've championed the Medicaid expansion bill. It would help 1.5 million Texans get healthcare that we already pay for. It's backed by most of our chambers of commerce, and it's fiscally responsible because it's Texas taxpayer money that we want to put back in our state to help our fellow Texans. I'm proud to have helped pass House Bill 3, which lowered our local property taxes. And I'm going to keep fighting for these core issues. We've got to keep and make sure that public education is always at the forefront. And also in a suburban area like our district, we have to make sure that we're not pricing people out of their home. And we do that by investing more in public education and lowering our local property taxes simultaneously. So thank you for having me here. I'm looking forward to this forum, and we must all work together to make sure that when we're in the legislature, it's not partisan, it's fighting for the Texas values of public education and access to healthcare.
Thank you so much. And we're going to go back to District 52 to Representative James Talarico. Remember, his opponent is Mr. Lucio Valdez. So Representative Talarico, would you like to give your quick 1-minute introduction, please?
Yeah, absolutely. I have the honor of serving as the youngest member of the legislature, but obviously I don't know how to work an iPhone. So, but I'm so glad to be here. I was at the same Javier Ambler vigil with his family. So thanks for bearing with us. Before I was a politician, I was a middle school teacher in one of the poorest neighborhoods in Texas. The stories of my students motivated me to run for office 2 years ago for the seat of state representative. And I was fortunate enough to get elected and to serve as one of only 3 members of 150 state house members who has had classroom experience. And I was appointed to the Public Education Committee, where I worked with the 12 other members of that committee, Republican, Democrat, rural, urban, suburban, young, old, black, white, and brown, to be able to craft a historic school finance reform bill that invested $12 billion into our education system, gave almost every teacher in our state a pay raise, and lowered property tax rates across Williamson County. So I would be honored, especially during this crisis, to go back to the Capitol, represent students and teachers as a state representative. So thank y'all for having me, and look forward to answering your questions.
Sounds great. All right, we did it, you guys. We got everybody to have their 1-minute introduction, and we are pretty much on time, which is awesome. So if, in case you're joining us a little bit late, just to let everybody know, this is the Central Texas Candidate Forum. It's hosted by several Asian American organizations that are nonpartisan. WiseUp Texas, we are a nonpartisan nonprofit organization aiming to educate and inform the Texas South Asian community, and there are several other organizations that are partaking in this event. We also wanted to give you all a reminder that we do not endorse any of the candidates, but there are members of the AAPAC that are also attending this forum, so we wanted to make sure that there was full disclosure on that. Just to let everybody know what our next format is going to be, because there's so many of us, we're going to go around kind of similarly how we did earlier with the introductions and ask questions. Again, each candidate will have about 60 to 90 seconds to answer their questions. We're hoping for 2 rounds of this, and then by 3 p.m., we're hoping to open it up to Q&A. And if you're watching us right now, you are probably on Facebook Live, and we highly recommend for you to put your Q&As, or your questions actually, into the comment section of Facebook Live, and we will ask those questions accordingly. And please let us know the question, which representative that you would like the question to be asked to. So I will give that reminder again after our first round of questions. But let's start again with District 20. Jessica, if you wouldn't mind turning back on your camera and video. Hi. So we would like to know, you have on your campaign, your policy issues are infrastructure, election reform, cannabis, and healthcare. And I know that we can't go over every single item right now with our time frame, but I'm curious to know, out of those 4, which one do you think is going to be the most important for you to work on if you become elected for this upcoming legislative session?
You know, with everything that's been going on with the economic crisis that we're hitting in combination with the pandemic that we're dealing with at the state level, and with everything that our schools are going through, it all cohesively comes together to become massively important. Healthcare is such a big priority because we already had an issue with uninsured people in Texas not being able to get access to care, with rural hospitals failing in Texas because of uninsured rates in their communities. I would say that is probably the most significant issue that we have to face going into the session, is how we deal with healthcare in Texas. And I really look forward to working with John Bucy and James Talarico on that in particular. I know John Bucy is for expanding Medicare in Texas. But we've got a lot of work to do just overall, and each piece has an impact on it. Cannabis in Texas would help the economic crisis that we're facing, and would help us raise even more money to help address the issues. And election reform is something that there are parts of that we only get to deal with about every 10 years, and 2021 is that year that we get to deal with. So it's all very significant and important, but healthcare is probably number 1.
Thank you so much. And so now we'll go to District 47. Mr. Michael Clark, would you mind telling us what is your main issue that you want to advocate for if you become elected for HD and represent HD 47?
I appreciate you asking me. When I ran and got the endorsement from the Libertarian Party, I ran on 2 counts. The number one was going to be we need to get rid of, legalize all drugs. And when I say legalize all drugs, I mean all drugs. We don't need to be locking people up for plants, for liquids that come from plants, for anything else coming from plants that anybody else would use for recreation, for maybe just escaping for a moment and at their own peril. That's totally fine. I think my opponent, Vikki Goodwin, would also agree with that we don't need to be locking people up for that. The second would be the property taxes, and I know that she's not on board with that, but my platform was we need to eliminate all property taxes. Property taxes are the second most egregious tax that the government can levy on you. The first being the payroll tax, where you go to work, hey, I'm going to go to work, and then the government decides, hey, I know that your blood, sweat, and tears went into that. We're going to take that. No, that belongs to the people. So the property tax would be the second thing, is in I own this house, and you are essentially renting this house from the government. That's wrong. You're going to pay the government for not only going to work, but then after you go to work, you're going to pay them for renting your house, renting it on that level of the land? No, that's absolutely wrong. So those were the 2 I ran on.
All right, property taxes and legalizing all drugs. Thank you. And Mr. Justin Berry had to sign off because he had to work on some issues that are occurring in Austin, and so he won't be able to answer the rest of the questions, but we will now take it to Representative Vikki Goodwin. And there you are. Just making sure you're on camera. I saw on your website, it seems that education reform is pretty big for you on your platform. And as we know, with COVID, the budget is probably going to take some major cuts. What would you do if you're reelected to ensure that there would be no, really harsh cuts on the Texas public education system?
Yeah, absolutely. That is so important because we just passed House Bill 3 this session to put a lot more money into our public schools as a result of a prior cut in 2011, taking a lot of money out of the schools. It's really important that we pay our teachers well and treat them as a profession that they are. So in order to keep from having to cut our education budget, we will have to reach into the rainy day fund, which is why it's there. So during session, I actually worked very hard to pass a personal financial literacy bill, which would have required high school students to take 1 semester of that class. And it's just basic finances that when you're in tough times, you have to use your savings. That's what our rainy day fund is. It's our savings account. Texas has a very healthy savings account. And rather than cutting really critical investments in education and healthcare, we'll have to use that rainy day fund, or at least a part of it.
Okay, thank you. And so let's go to District 48. We will start with Bill Strieber. Did I pronounce it correctly this time?
Yes, you did. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. You, in your candidate platform or website, you talked about reducing spending, and then property taxes and school funding, and those a lot of time can go hand in hand to an extent. What if you were elected? What do you envision in terms of tying all 3 of those issues together as to how that would work out?
Starting with property taxes, there's plenty of room for reduction, and since a good portion of the property taxes go to school funding. The way the school funding mechanism can be adjusted to where part of it for the maintenance and operation can be self-sufficient, therefore being able to lower the property taxes moving forward. I would like to see less of a bureaucracy running the school systems with the way it's financed district by district, and tie more of the funding to the individual students as opposed to the districts and the labyrinth of calculations they use to finance the schools.
Okay, thank you. And now let's go to the representative from District 48, which is Representative Donna Howard. And I wanted to talk to you about, on your platform, about affordable higher education. How would you see, okay, I'm going to rephrase this. Given the current status of COVID, and we don't know what the openings of universities and colleges and people being charged the same amount of tuition, even though classes will be remote and online. I'm just curious, when January comes around and we're still probably in some sort of limbo, how would you implement any sort of legislation that is going to tackle these COVID issues, this online learning, and continuously having to support affordable higher education for Texas residents? Or
there's a lot
to apply for college.
Okay. There's a lot there in your question. The fact is that we know that higher education is extremely important in terms of having an educated workforce pipeline, and the investments we make there are critical to our economy. In addition to that, we know that the investments in research are also very important, as we've seen with the research going on with COVID-related needs that we have right now. We can't let up in what we're doing to invest in higher education. But you're right that affordability has been a big part of the problem here in terms of families being able to make sure that they have the resources they need for family members to attend higher education, and not only to attend, but to persist and complete. Texas has the Texas Grants Program, which is a tuition assistance program that I have been fighting for each session to increase funding of, so that we can allow all eligible students to actually access these funds. But I also want to mention, in terms of the budgets for our higher education institutions, just like with everything else, the state's share of paying for higher education has eroded over the years. When tuition deregulation occurred years ago, it meant that the burden of funding higher education fell more onto the students and their families to tuition. The state has put in less and less. And in fact, we are investing less per constant dollar at this point in time than we did prior to the deregulation of tuition. So institutions are looking at all kinds of mechanisms to bring in the revenue. And you're right that there's a big challenge here with the online learning that's going to be going on. That there is a cost obviously involved with that, but there are certain, I think, some discussion that needs to occur around what the relative differences might be here. But the bottom line is that we need to have students in higher education. That's still where our jobs come from. We need post-secondary education for the vast number of jobs. It looks like you're telling me that I need to stop now, but I'm going to continue to fight for investments in higher education.
Okay, thank you so much. Moving on to District 49, Representative Hinojosa. On your platform, you have one of your major issues about campus carry, and I know that legislation passed back in 2015. Do you intend to file some sort of legislation, moving forward for the 2021, wow, time flew, legislative session? And if so, what is that outline of that type of legislation?
Yes, thanks for bringing this issue up. I do think this still needs to be a priority in our work. We'll be dealing with COVID this session. We'll be dealing with issues of police reform. But let's remember that we will continue to not be safe in our communities so long as people who should not have access to guns have very easy access to guns. And I will be filing a bill this session, for instance, that would prohibit somebody from purchasing a gun who has an active warrant for his or her arrest. Right now in the state of Texas, which a lot of people don't know this, but you can go to a licensed gun dealer, pass a background check, buy a gun, even if there's an active warrant for your arrest, even if the warrant is for murder. And it's insane. But this is just one of many examples of how our current laws that should be able to protect us from guns getting in the wrong hands just aren't adequate. And so we need to prioritize this issue to keep our communities safe.
Thank you. So District 50, Representative Israel, if you have your camera on, mic. There she is.
Hi.
Okay. Hi. So our question to you is about, it seems like on your platform, you're a really huge advocate for voter registration.
Yeah.
And voting rights. And do you mind expanding on that? Like kind of, I know it's you only have a minute, but if you don't mind giving us a brief blip of what you've filed in the past legislatively and what you plan to do if you're reelected in 2021.
Well, there's a lot to it. It's a very dry topic. It's a very bipartisan topic. Our county elections officials just want good systems in place. So there's a lot we can agree upon. Unfortunately, my number one issue is online voter registration. There's about 40 states now that have it. Very conservative states like Oklahoma and Arizona have it. And it's good government, it's efficient systems, it saves counties money, it's a good use of our dollar. Online registration is more secure than in-person registration. So that will continue to be a priority. They're gonna put it on my headstone when I die. She passed online voter registration.
All right, thank you so much. I believe District 50's opponent, Representative Israel's opponent, is not here. So we're going to move on to District 51, and that is Representative Rodriguez. Oh, there he is. Okay. So you have talked a lot on your platform about affordable housing. That seems to be something that you really advocate on. And again, kind of similar to what we asked Representative Israel, you know, what have you passed in the past in terms of affordable housing and how you intend to expand on that if you're reelected for this upcoming legislative session?
Certainly, thank you for the question. Yeah, I passed back in 2000, I believe it was 5, the Homestead Preservation Act, which basically provides that in certain parts of the city of Austin, it's very localized to Austin, you would have the gentrification as it happens, that you would have a TIF mechanism that allow for some of the tax dollars and the increase of property taxes to stay within that district to help provide for more affordable housing. And it also utilizes land trusts and land banks as well. And I'm sorry, my allergies are killing me. I'm sorry that I sound kind of sick. And so I want to expand that. Last session, I worked on a legislation that didn't pass. Actually, it passed, but it was vetoed by our governor to kind of expand that and give the city of Austin more tools to do that. So I'll continue to work on that as well. And also the last thing I'll say, I know I'm running out of time, is that we also need to change the law that provides for some affordable housing developments to happen within a mile radius of each other. That was a bill that passed several sessions ago. We need to look at that again. Senator Watson and I had worked on that bill last session. I want to continue doing that for next session as well.
Thank you so much. And we're going to move to District 52 and Representative Talarico. My question to you is, on your platform, you talk about maintaining local control. With the current status of, COVID and some of the mask mandates that have, occurred, and there seems to be a little bit of confusion as to what is happening on the state level versus what's happening on the local level. I'm curious to know what your thoughts are if you become reelected, how you would, pass legislation regarding local control, especially when it comes to the current public health crisis we're currently in?
Yeah, great question. You know, last session, I fought for local control at every turn. There were politicians at the state level who thought it was their right to impose their radical agendas on local governments, counties, and cities. And as a Democrat, it's a little strange to be the ones championing local control, but I think that tells you about the state of Texas politics, that is now a Democratic position. But like you said, you know, this pandemic is a great example of how we need to ensure that that our local governments have the ability to keep their community safe. And our governor, unfortunately, has too often decided to interfere with the decisions made by local communities. And we've seen the devastating impacts of that interference. And so if I'm reelected to this position and I go back to the state capitol, I will continue to be a champion, an advocate, and a partner to local communities, and not trying to override them with my own agenda. I think that's the role of a state representative. I tell my county officials, I have wonderful relationships with my local mayors, with local city council members, and I tell them my job is to be your cheerleader. You were elected to do your job, and you were given that sacred responsibility by your voters in your community. And my job is to support that at the State House.
Okay, thank you. And so District 52, the opponent against Representative Talarico is Mr. Lucio Valdez. And my question to you is, on your platform, on your website, you talk about the American dream being threatened. I'm curious if you wouldn't mind expanding on that term and phrase, and if you are elected and representing District 52, how would you pass some sort of legislation that you think would, rectify this issue? Oh, you're on mute, so we can't hear you.
There you go. Thank you for that question, because yes, the American dream is being threatened every day with our borders being open, you know, the drug trafficking and the human trafficking that is coming across the border that, you know, that I personally witnessed when I worked on the border myself, you know, is astronomical. It's getting uncontrollable, you know, pretty much as it is already with the drug trafficking, and the human trafficking being the next phase of the drug trafficking. As you can see, since all this COVID stuff has started, and now the defunding of the police action that has occurred, the crime rate and the murder rate in Austin alone has gone up over 60% since all this has started. So, you know, the American dream of someone coming here to Texas and living peaceful is being, you know, slowly degraded by the, I don't want to say sides, but legislators trying to, you know, impose stricter gun laws, impose stricter laws that allow police officers to protect you, and you can't protect yourself either. So that's where I'm saying that the American dream, or the Texas dream, is being threatened in everyday life.
Okay, thank you. And now let's go to District 136. And I think I pronounced your last name incorrectly. Representative John, is it Bucy or?
It's John Bucy, you got it right.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Let's talk about pre-K for all. So I see that's pretty big on your platform, and given we're going to have a very tight state budget, I'm curious as to what you think we should cut within the state budget in order for pre-K for all to be properly funded.
Well, one, I thank you for the question, because pre-K and public education, and especially with our young individuals, starting out as early as possible, getting a strong education, we know is the single most important thing to finding success in life. So pre-K for all and public education is at the heart of what we all should be fighting for. As far as the budget, though, I don't buy the premise. The budget is not limited to the current thinking. We can add areas of revenue. We know it's going to be tight. We know it's going to be hard, but passing pre-K for all isn't an issue of are there enough money and resources in this state? It's about, is this a priority or not? And so if we prioritize it, we can get it done. There's other areas of revenue. We could shut down some of the corporate loopholes. We need to be more focused on supporting our local and small businesses in our community and economy, which is why I was proud to pass a local hotel occupancy tax bill that has done more for the city of Cedar Park's economy than my predecessors ever did. And so I'm proud of supporting local economy, and we need to make sure that we're prioritizing that. And that's where there's so many revenue resources we can have for our budget. So pre-K for all is essential to helping our children get the first start that they need. And we do that by prioritizing that as a legislature. Texas has an abundance amount of resources. We need to think outside the box when it comes to the budget this next session and think of other areas of revenue.
Okay, thank you. And now I'm going to go to Mike, Mr. Guevara. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that again. Okay, so on your platform, you talked about being a small business owner. And we know because of COVID, small business owners have taken a pretty big hit. If you are elected, what are your thoughts on the types of legislation you would like to have passed to provide small business owners relief due to post-COVID?
Sure, thank you very much. I'm a small business owner. I'm partnered with a law firm. We have a branch in Williamson County, which is in Cedar Park, and I'm the managing partner of that branch. And being a small business owner and talking to people throughout Cedar Park and in the district, the biggest thing right now is to let the businesses operate and let them be responsible, let them make the decisions regarding whether it's masked or whether to open, and not bring in all this regulation down on top of them. As far as legislation goes to help small businesses, Texas has been often called the Texas miracle, because businesses are moving in here all the time. It's been a wonderful place to business, and that's what I want to keep it to be, is a great place of business. And how we do that is we limit the regulation on those businesses. We don't bring on more regulations. You see, down in Austin, when they brought in the specific that you had to do certain types of leave or vacation time and things along that line, leave the businesses alone, let them operate, let the market decide. And I actually think that's an answer for a lot of things. I think it's the answer for education. I certainly think it's the answer for healthcare. But like I said, small business, let them operate as small businesses and don't regulate them, and they'll figure it out. The market always has in Texas. So that would be my suggestion, is less legislation.
All right, thank you so much. All right, so we finished our first round of questions, and we're going to pivot over to the second round. If you're joining us a little late, remember that we're only going to have one more round of questions. So if you in the audience have some questions that you'd like to ask the representatives, please put them in on the Facebook Live comments so that we can aggregate all those questions together. And please let us know which representative or candidate you would like to have us direct the question to. So let's move on to the second round of questions before we get to Q&A from the audience. And this time we're gonna work backwards. So those of you that just answered, you're gonna go first this time. So I'm going to start again with District 136, and Representative Bucy, this is your question. And I am curious as to, we are a coalition of Asian American organizations, and I would love to know what your thoughts are as to how the Asian American community has been contributing within your district.
Well, the Asian American community is rapidly growing in House District 136, and especially we look in the Austin area, Avery Ranch in that area, it's a booming population. I've enjoyed so much my time getting to meet with different organizations and groups and learn more about people's personal experiences and their culture and what they care the most about and what their priorities are in the state. And the conversations are so similar that you would expect. It's about fighting for our kids, a strong future for our children, fighting for public education. I think one thing that we have to really think about, especially with the president that we've had, we've seen racism really be brought to the forefront, and it creates a threatening environment. And I hear this regularly from our Asian communities, how they feel threatened by the president and by the words that he chooses. We need to have our elected leaders and our candidates stand up to this type of discrimination. And they need to know that if we're going to be serving them, that we have their back. So all of our communities need to be felt welcomed and enriched and a part of this greater community, and that we all sit at the same table and we can all work together. And it makes us all better in the long run. So I think what we need to do is make sure that we are expanding the table to hear from more individuals and make sure that all of our voices are amplified so we can work together to build a better community. We have to push past any racism or cynicism that holds us back from our greater potential.
Thank you so much. And Mr. Guevara, I see in your on your website, you are the founder of Williamson County Adoption Day, and I'm curious as to, have you had a lot of Asian American participation in that by any chance, or?
So yes, actually, I was the founder for Williamson County Adoption Day, which is something I'm very proud of as an attorney. I worked with the Department of Family and Protective Services to bring children that are in our system, which the last time I saw the number was a little over 7,000 kids are currently in the CPS system and in that process of adoption, not just waiting for cases for the children to come back. I haven't seen a lot of Asian involvement in that either as foster parents or as children in there, which actually is a credit to the Asian community. And, you know, with regard to the Cedar Park area, I've had the opportunity to work with the Indo-American, the Hindu community quite a bit. They've had some issues regarding some concerns with law enforcement. So I've worked with the city of Cedar Park to get that done. I meet with them regularly. Right before COVID hit, I was actually meeting with them to appoint one of them because they have strong economic values and strong economic knowledge to bring them into Cedar Park as a member on one of the committees that I have appointments to. And all due respect to Mr. Representative Bucy, I've heard the exact opposite from the Asian community, and I actually just met with them. I had a forum with them last week. And they are very concerned about the law enforcement issue, and they're huge supporters of Trump because of the way that he's worked with in India and some of the other countries over there. And they're actually more concerned of what happens if the Democrats get involved because of some other issues with regard to some other races. So no, not a lot of involvement with the Asian community, but I have enjoyed a strong relationship with the Hindu community over the last 6 months or so.
Thank you. District 52, Mr. Lucio Valdez. My question to you is, in terms of community safety, I'm curious, because you have a background in law enforcement, if you have dealt with any issues with Asian Americans feeling threatened within HD 52 or within the, you know, when you were working as an officer, and if so, what were ways that you combated those issues? Oh, you're on mute again, sorry.
There you go. Yeah, actually here in HD 52, I've not had much interaction with the Asian community per se, other than all the Asians and Indian born individuals that I see in my surroundings here are all business owners and hard workers. I've never seen them, with my involvement with the local police department here, my involvement with the city council here, I haven't seen any issues with the Asian or Indian community here. Now, in reference as to when I was a police officer, the only involvement that I had, again, they were primarily in the fishing and shipping industry, and again, very hard workers that we never had issues. From my law enforcement standpoint, we would see that the Asian and Indian community were very disciplined in their family lives. They're 99.9% of them are both parent families. So the discipline is very instilled in values in their children. So we never had any issues. My wife is a retired school teacher, and same thing in the education field, both in Galveston and here in the Hutto area where my wife retired from. The Asian community are very active in the schools, very active with their children. So, you know, I can't ever recall as a law enforcement officer ever arresting an Asian or an Indian nationality in my career that I can recall. And I just know that my wife, she had some dear friends, that students who she had from third grade all the way up to they graduated from college, and they still keep in contact with her. So, I applaud the values and the upbringing and the family, connection of the Asian and Indian family.
Thank you. Representative Talarico, you have put on your platform also the increasing minimum wage is pretty big on your platform. And so I kind of wanted to talk to you about how you would approach that for this upcoming legislative session if you're reelected.
Yeah, it's a great question. We've been talking about public safety, and I often feel we don't have a broad enough definition of what public safety means, because for most folks, including folks in the Asian American community, things like economic security and public health also count as public safety. And so, when we talk about raising the minimum wage, I think that's the bare minimum of what we need to do to ensure that we have economic opportunity across Texas for working class folks. And in my community in particular, we have a lot of middle class families who are feeling squeezed by this economic collapse that we're experiencing. And we have families who are struggling to get by. And what the state government can do is at least ensure that there is a level playing field and that all of our families have an equal shot at getting ahead. And I think raising the minimum wage so that no working family in this country lives in poverty is the bare minimum of what we can do.
Okay, thank you. And now we'll move to District 51, Representative Eddie Rodriguez. And my question to you is, you have immigration as a really big on your candidate platform. And I was curious to know, we know that a lot of immigration legislation has passed in the past couple of years. And I'm curious as to, have you heard anything from the Asian American community about how that type of legislation has impacted, whether in a detrimental or in a positive way? And if so, what were they?
Yeah, thank you. That's a great question. I haven't heard much about how it's impacted the Asian American community in a positive way. What I have seen, obviously a lot of this legislation is geared much more towards the Latino community, the immigrant community from south of the border. But what I have seen is a lot of the Asian American community working with me and others in the Mexican American Legislative Caucus because they know that that issue impacts them as well, can impact them as well. So I see a lot of solidarity with the Asian American community, specifically if they've experienced something, how that legislation has impacted them individually or personally, not as much, I will be honest with you, as it has the Latino community. But I've been very, it's been very heartening for me to really find that solidarity with the Asian American community and wanting to work on that issue with the Latino community as well.
Okay, thank you. And we'll go to District 50, Representative Israel.
Hi.
Hi. Oh, not driving anymore. Back home.
I'm safe.
You're safe. I was slightly concerned. I'm not going to lie. I was like, driving, and she's like, looking at us and participating.
we're all safe back. We're good.
That's good. That's good. So my question is to you is, I see on your platform you talk about racial justice issues as being one of the top issues that you want to advocate for. And given what we've seen with Black Lives Matter and George Floyd, I would be curious to know what type of legislation you would like to pass for the upcoming legislative session if you're reelected.
Well, it's a great question. My fear is that during this time of pandemic combined with the social justice crisis, that we forget, we're loving all over our essential workers and stuff like that. We can't forget this when we come back in January. So we have, as a body, sort of agreed that we will make sure that, I think it's really important for those of us who are not Black to listen to those who are, and the Black Caucus is making a priority of the George Floyd Act. So it'll be an omnibus bill that will have a lot of things in it related to equity and criminal justice. This has been an issue that has been more and more, there is good common ground between Republicans and Democrats on it. It's as you've seen from the forum here. So I have a desire to work with the caucus on a variety of issues. No one in particular. The one bill that I did do was to end the curfew for minors. Talked with our police chief there in Pflugerville and in Austin. because there should not be a criminal record for someone who is simply after hours. There should be an effort there to do community policing. So that would be my addition to what will probably be an omnibus bill related to this topic.
Okay, thank you. And now we go to District 49, Representative Hinojosa. My question to you is, I know that you have been a huge advocate for education, and we know that this past legislative session, we got an increase in educational funding, and there has been talk about using the rainy day fund to, continue funding that, given there will be a very tight budget this upcoming legislative session. And so let's say hypothetically that is able to work out and happen. What would you do if you are reelected to expand education reform within Texas?
Well, I think someone's already mentioned that we do need to make sure that we secure the funding boost that we all work so hard to get. I want to recognize how hard Democrats fought alongside with parents and teachers to get that funding boost. We originally, there was a plan to put $4 billion more into public education. Democrats put forward a $16.5 billion plan. Ultimately, that pushed the House plan to $9 billion, and we ended somewhere at about $6.5 billion. And so we really have been at the forefront of pushing to fully fund our public schools. What we're going to need to do coming into this next session is make sure that our public education system meets the demands of this pandemic. It can't be public education as usual. The focus on the STAR testing, all the resources, time, and energy that go into that is not appropriate during this time. So at minimum, as we look to what is probably going to be another 2 years responding to this pandemic, given our inability to get this virus under control under the leadership of Governor Abbott and President Trump, we need to make sure that education is appropriate for our kids today, and definitely it should include stopping these high stakes standardized tests during this time.
Okay, thank you. District 48. Representative Howard, I'm going to ask you a question. On your platform, you have gun safety awareness campaign. And is that, just overall within the state of Texas? Are you focusing more on schools? I'm curious if you don't mind giving us a little bit more detail on that and what you intend to do with that if you're reelected for the upcoming legislative session.
Yeah, our legislation for a statewide gun safety awareness campaign was the only piece of legislation that got through, albeit not with the bill, but by putting something in the budget in regard to looking at gun safety. There was a strong amount of bipartisan support for this. The fact is that we have a large number of accidental deaths, especially of young children who get access to improperly stored firearms. We also know that completed suicides, that there are statistics that indicate that accessibility to a firearm actually exacerbates that situation. So we know that if you have properly stored firearms, you also have the potential to decrease suicides. And then also a large number of guns are acquired through theft and get on the black market and are actually used in violent crime. Those oftentimes occur in cars, but also can be in homes because the firearms are not properly locked away. So we are working, we got some money into the budget for the Department of Public Safety to launch a statewide campaign to talk with and alert responsible gun owners who, for whatever reason, just have neglected to put these mechanisms in place, did not maybe realize the importance of it, did not think about the fact that what you do to prevent a toddler from accessing a gun may be different than a teenager accessing a gun. So it's really about a consciousness awareness here, and saying we need to have some kind of catchy motto here. We need to have some kind of ongoing effort to remind people, if you're a responsible gun owner, you're going to lock your firearm away and that will help save Texas lives through accidents, through suicides, and through homicides from stolen firearms.
Thank you. And so now I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Bill Strieber. And my question to you is, if you're elected to represent House District 48, what is the one piece of legislation you definitely want passed? Like the number one thing on your agenda, and the number one thing that's motivating you to run for office because you want this one bill passed?
Where to start? There's plenty of them.
You get to only pick one.
When I first filed to run for office, the issue that drove me to do that was the homeless issue and the vagrancy and squalor in the streets, and looking to address how to help those people truly in need of help to get them off the streets. With 2020 happening and the pestilence and the anarchy and everything else that's going on, and seeing how the Austin City Council has responded to this, the one piece of legislation I would like to see passed, I'm running for an office that is a servant's office, a citizen servant's office. House of Reps don't get paid but $5,700, $7,500 a year. City councilman in Austin gets paid $85,000 a year. It's a full-time politician's job, and all they are is an advocate for liberal policies here in Austin. What I would like to see is state legislation constitutionally authorized by the Texas Constitution to make a city council form of government with a mayor and city manager par with the state legislature, that city council members get paid a stipend like a state rep, as opposed to being a high paid politician that becomes nothing more than an advocate, basically defund City Hall.
All right, thank you. And now let's pivot to District 47, Representative Goodwin. My question to you is, I saw on your website you have worked on an anti-racism advisory group, and I would love if you could give us a little bit more detail about what all that entails, and then again with the current crisis that we've seen with Black Lives Matter and the protests, I'm wondering how you would intend to tie that in for the upcoming legislative session.
Yeah, absolutely. So I did establish an anti-racism advisory group, and I reached throughout the district trying to get as diverse a group as possible so that we have a few people who are Black, who are Latinx, who are Asian American, and a couple of people who are white as well. And their job is to help me prioritize legislation that can bring about better equity, better race relations, not just in the district, but in the state. I know that I will be working with the Texas Legislative Black Caucus on their legislation priorities. For example, Representative Thompson has already laid out the George Floyd Act that she'll be presenting next session. So I don't need to duplicate things like that, but we will hopefully come up with some other ideas in addition to those. Police brutality, criminal justice reform, but I have different committees within that group looking at education. How can we bring more equity to our education? One of the groups is looking at the environment, and one of the groups is looking at economic disparity. So their job, again, is to help me prioritize legislation for next session that can bring about better equity. One of the ideas that came up was the fact that a lot of Black children don't see Black teachers in our schools. And so how can we push that idea forward? So I'm sure they'll have a lot of ideas for us.
Thank you so much. And now we're going to Michael Clark. And you commented on the chat that you would like to talk about minimum wage. So I'm going to give you that opportunity as to what your thoughts are on that.
I would absolutely love to talk about minimum wage. And by minimum wage, I mean that is garbage. A business is able to pay its workers what their workers are worth. And I don't want to hear anybody say, well, these workers might be able to, I don't know, funnel X, Y, and Z products but they can't funnel the A, B, and C products. So we should pay them exactly what the X, Y, and Z products people are worth. The minimum wage it's a fraud. It's the minimum wage is what a company can pay. It's what a company can pay. And to force anybody, it doesn't matter whether it's Republican, Democrat, anybody else saying, well, these other people need to say that they need to pay $16, $18, $20, $50, $70 an hour. That's what they need to pay for a living wage. No, the living wage is what you're able to make. So what you're able to make, that's totally fair. If you had a gardener who could grow tomatoes and then another gardener who couldn't grow couldn't grow anything at all, your gardener who would grow tomatoes would get more money, yes? Because that's what they're able to do. You are not responsible for funding anything else that the other workers are for.
Okay, thank you so much. I'm sorry you ran out of time.
No, I'm sorry.
It's okay. We're going to move to District 20. And again, this is our last question. So again, if you're in the audience, please put your questions for our Q&A session on the Facebook live comment section so we can get to them. So Jessica, my question to you is in regards to infrastructure. If you are elected to represent District 20, what do you think are the infrastructure issues that are occurring within your district, and how would you intend to fix them?
So there's two things that tend to come up most often when I talk to voters in my area. The first one is the lack of broadband internet in their areas. We have large rural areas where you can get DSL if you're lucky. You can get satellite, obviously, but those are not broadband internet sources out here. So it does limit people's access, and especially during a time where people are trying to work remote, where schools are offering remote options for families that want to keep their kids at home. It's vitally important that they have access to good broadband internet so that they're able to take advantage of that. And one of the big things that stands in the way of having good broadband internet throughout Texas that can be handled at the state level is that there are actually laws in the book in Texas that prevent municipalities and county governments from being able to provide internet to their constituents if voters decided that was something they wanted to invest in their communities. So that's just one way that we could greatly open up access to broadband internet in Texas, would be allowing municipalities and county governments to provide internet service to their residents. The other thing that I hear a lot about are aggregate quarries in our area, and these are stone quarries where the primary way of getting stone out is to drill holes and put explosives through, and what you end up is with smaller stone rubble. And these explosions.
We're actually out of time. I'm sorry. I'm gonna have to cut you off because I'm gonna pivot us over to Q&A. So we are starting to get some questions in, and I will start reading them out in terms of which representative or which candidate these questions are going to. So the first one is to Representative Israel, and it says, do you support the calls for defunding the police as a means of dealing with bad actors among them? And you have, again, 1 minute to answer.
No, I don't. I support police reform. I do not support defunding the police.
Okay, thank you. Question for Representative Bucy. Since you want to spend more, what taxes or fees would you increase for state revenue?
Well, I wouldn't increase taxes. I would close tax loopholes. We've allowed loopholes in the tax system for corporations. And so I would also look at wasteful spending. We need to let the federal government do their job, and we need to do our job as a state government. And then we need to respect local control and let local governments do their job. often it seems our counterparts across the aisle have tried to micromanage other governments, whether it's up or down. So I wouldn't increase taxes. I would cut some of the loopholes that have been there. And I would make sure that what we really do is we fund our priorities, which again, when you meet with Texans from different backgrounds, different communities, you hear the same answer, and that's to fight for our public education and to fight for healthcare. So I don't agree with the premise of that question. I wouldn't increase taxes.
Okay. Representative Israel, we have another question for you. It says, the pandemic presents a lot of challenges to voters and campaigns, and there will not be a straight ticket option for voters in November. We have seen a number of close races in Central Texas. Can you speak to the importance of voting down ballot?
Yeah, in 2018, Texans voted at near presidential levels. And I believe that one of the reasons why the legislature did an about face in many ways and finally invested new revenue into the public education system is because Texas voters rose up so strongly. There's a few of those races that were decided by 200 votes in a state as big as Texas. So I applaud all of you because I know that my friends in the Asian American community have always wanted more and more people within the Asian American community to care. So I illustrate that when we vote, your voice is heard. We have a Republican governor, a Republican lieutenant governor, and a Republican House. My hope is that we can recalibrate the balance of power in Texas, because where there is balance, there is a thoughtful solution. So your vote this year is hugely important, not just because of a presidential election, but because of all these good women and men who want your vote, and redistricting is on the line. So it's a historic year with the intersection of all of those things. So okay. Thank you for the question.
Thank you. All right. Mr. Guevara, in light of the projected shortfall in our Texas budget, how would you plan to balance the state budget, and what areas would you consider cutting?
That's going to be a huge question to answer coming in because of the shortfall. You know, one of the things you've heard a lot of talk about is using money from the rainy day fund for the schools, and that's something that was done during the last legislative session, and it seems to work well. The problem is, and the municipalities have a similar fund, we call it the fund balance in our budget, and what that is, it's additional money that's set aside. You try to grow it every year, and really what that is for one-time projects, not for stuff that's that you're going to have to pay for every year. So my concern with regard to using the rainy day fund is that when does that stop? Because that fund will run out if we try to use it every year. You know, as far as the balancing of the budget itself, we're just going to have to really look at the projects. I know that I've worked with municipalities in Cedar Park. We presented a balanced budget through our staff, and I've worked with other municipalities throughout the state. And what the marching order has been to the department heads is you're going to have to figure out how to cut individually within the departments. And so the same thing is going to be asked for, and has been asked for already by the state hierarchy, for individual agencies to cut their budgets, to get lean, which I think is a positive, to get lean, because that finds out where we really need the money to go. So that's where it's going to have to be. It's going to have to be from individual departments, and there may just be parts of departments that are no longer needed. Like I said, I think that smaller legislation, smaller bureaucracy, particularly with regard to small businesses, is something that will benefit the entire economy throughout the state of Texas.
Okay, thank you for that. Again, just a reminder, if you have questions, please let us know which representative you would like to have answer your question. We can't ask like a broad question to everyone. We've already gone through our Q&A session, so please specify which representative you'd like for us to direct the question to. And this one is for Representative Howard. Somebody is asking if there is any help you can give to vote by mail ballot during this difficult and dangerous time to go out into the public and vote in person.
Yeah, well, and again, Representative Israel is the one that's really been focused a lot on voter registration and helping people to vote, as has Representative Bucy. But I'm glad to say that we're all working on it together with them. And the fact is that the governor, to his credit, did extend early voting, which is going to help some in terms of people having more time to get to the polls early in person and vote, and therefore hopefully avoid crowds. I know that in Travis County, Dana DeBeauvoir has done a great job of setting up the voting systems. If any of you voted in person in this last election, you saw that there was spacing involved. All of the people that were working there were wearing masks or shields. They had the little, what am I called? The little things, the little rubber things you put on your finger to vote so that you weren't touching things. They had sanitizer. They handled it very well. But the fact is that with voting by mail, there are some glitches. There are some problems, and we know that there's a problem right now nationally with the United States Postal Service and whether or not we can get things done in time. There's going to be challenges. We want people to be able to vote by mail. We think it's the safest thing to do right now, whether you're over 65 or not. But that being said, we're trying to make sure that when you do vote in person, that there's an extended time here, that you can do that safely. But voting by mail, you know, there's a lot of states that do that. We should be doing it. It's just an obstruction of access to the voting booth by not allowing us to do that.
Okay, thank you so much. Let's see, sorry, just checking the questions real fast. I think this will probably be our last question. This one again is for Representative Israel. Do you feel property taxes are too high? If so, what more can the state do to reduce property tax burdens?
Well, yeah, I can tell you as a homeowner and as a realtor, it hurts my heart to have to tell my clients you have to drive until you can afford a home. So it's an issue of appraisal, and appraisal means your taxes go higher. You know, I would support support of us looking at how we appraise commercial properties, because I think that we don't have uniformity. For example, if Frost Bank puts in a new bank in Austin, and then they put in a new bank in Amarillo, they try to make a case to the county that it should be valued in the same way. And that's, of course, not the case. So I think we need to look at commercial appraisals and how that is playing into our equity discussion versus the burden that's being placed on residential taxpayers.
Okay, thank you. We're going to go to our last question. So if you haven't put in a question, I'm sorry, time has run out. But this question is to both Representative Howard and Bill Strieber from District 48. And so the question is, what would you do differently if the pandemic continues when you are elected?
Which one of us goes first? Which one of us goes first?
Go ahead.
Ladies first? Okay, thank you, Bill. Where we expect that the pandemic is going to go on for a while, unfortunately. We don't expect to have a vaccine in place by the time we get back to session. So we're having to actually look at physically how we're going to adjust the Capitol itself in order to allow for the public to be able to come in, for transparency to occur, and to do it in a safe way, which is going to impact how business is done. We also know that that's obviously going to affect what happens with our schools. I think that was talked about earlier today. So do differently. We're going to have to be looking at how do we conduct business in a safe way. That's one thing. But I want to just segue a bit to say with the budget, you know, I think it's going to be really important that we look at how do we continue to invest in Texans to allow the economy to continue to reopen and for our state to keep moving forward. It's not a time to back off of that. And quite frankly, we do have challenges, but we also have a lot of options, some of which have been discussed. And if you just noticed that in terms of the comptroller making the sales tax payments to the cities and based on what, and counties based on what just happened with the last disbursement, it's actually more was dispersed this last go round than the same time last year. Yes, we have challenges. There are a lot of people that are suffering, but our economy, thankfully, is diverse enough that we are actually moving forward in a way that there's a lot of hope for how we're going to be able to handle things. So different, I'm not sure what that's all going to mean at this point, but it's going to be impacting the choices that we make. And everything we do has to be investing in Texans, buoying them back up, making sure they're safe so we can go to school, we can go to higher education, people can get back to work, and our economy can keep moving forward.
Thank you. I'm going to pass it to Mr. Strieber. Same
First
question.
off, Representative Howard, my condolences for your loss of your husband recently. It's got to be tough what you're going through. I feel for you.
I appreciate it.
My name is Bill Strieber. I have a Bachelor of Science in Biological Sciences, so that's all the BS you're going to get from me about the pandemic. I ran an immunology company for several years, well-versed in how viruses and how antibodies and antigens and cellular biology and the immune system operate. There was a lot of misinformation that went out early on in this. There was some crazed people misreporting all kinds of different things. Early on, I said, we're going to have to see what happens when we get the data in. We need to do testing to determine how vicious this virus is, how bad this virus is. And reviewing the data, again, I'm no epidemiologist, but I understand this implicitly. It's not nearly as bad as we thought it was going to be to begin with. I think we need to accelerate the opening of businesses and schools, looking at who gets sick, how badly they get sick. It's unfortunate, as with all infectious diseases, some people are going to die. But having said that, that's life. I hate to be harsh, but I'm just looking at it from a biological perspective. We're always going to have viruses. We are not going to have a 100% effective vaccine ever for a coronavirus. Never have, never will. And so waiting for a vaccine, even if it does come out and it's highly effective, given every other opportunity to take vaccine, we only see 20 or 30% of the population taking vaccines anyway, and a large contingent of people that are completely against vaccines. So I'm not sure what waiting for a vaccine will do, but I'm all for opening up as quickly as possible.
Thank you. And that's all the time that we have for today. So again, a huge, huge thank you to all of the candidates that participated here. I'm going to say your names real fast in the districts. If you want to have your camera on real fast, so you can just give a quick wave so everybody knows who you are. At District 20, we have Jessica Tiedt. Okay, thank you so much. Sorry for mispronouncing your last name. Jessica Tiedt from District 20. District 47, we have Vikki, Representative Vikki Goodwin. Justin Berry was on with us earlier. He was able to give an introduction, and Michael Clark. And then District 48, we have Representative Donna Howard and Bill Strieber. District 49, Representative Gina Hinojosa. District 50, Representative Israel. District 51, Representative Eddie Rodriguez. District 52, Representative James Talarico, and his opponent, Mr. Lucio Valdez. District 136, Representative John Bucy, and his opponent, Mr. Mike Guevara. And so again, thank you so much for joining us today. This was a Central Texas Candidate Forum. Again, the organizations that put this together are WiseUp Texas, Austin Asian Community Civic Coalition, Indian American Coalition of Texas, South Asian Bar Association of Austin, Greater Austin Asian Chamber of Commerce, Korean American Association of Greater Austin, Austin Chinese American Network, Network of Asian American Organizations, and APAPA. And so thanks again for joining us today. We have 2 more candidate forums that will be happening in the next 2 Saturdays, same time, 2 to 3:30. We'll be focusing on congressional candidates and then some of your local candidates. So please make sure you put those on your calendar. We'll be having them on Facebook Live again. And so we are hoping to make sure that the Asian community, Asian American community in Central Texas gets to know their candidates so that you all are educated when you get to the polls. this upcoming November 2020 election. Thanks again, everyone, and have a great Saturday.
You take
Thanks,
care.
everybody. Thanks so
Bye, thank
much.
you.
Thank you.
Stay cool.
Thanks, y'all.